Hey, I'm Jim.
And I'm Geoff. Welcome to the Peacemakers Podcast.
I remember that right before we got married, an unnamed woman gave me 3 things, and I only remember 2 things that she said for a successful marriage. And the first was fighting fair. And the second was taking separate vacations. I don't remember the third one.
This is the Peacemakers Podcast, where we explore the Zen Peacemakers Three Tenets, and today we ask, what does taking action look like in our relationships? Most of us know what it feels like to want connection, to be seen, heard, and understood in relationship.
And for those of us who practice Zen, we often talk about the big stuff. War and peace, Auschwitz, the genocide of native peoples, systemic injustice. But sometimes the biggest tests and the biggest teachings show up right here at home.
Right. The everyday stuff. The moments of friction and vulnerability that arise in our closest relationships.
Exactly. That's what inspired this conversation. I thought it would be both fun and illuminating to talk with some of our closest friends and teachers about how Zen practice shows up in their committed relationships.
And so today, Geoff is guiding a roundtable conversation, a true peacemakers circle with several longtime Zen teachers who are also long-term partners. These are folks who've walked the Dharma path together for years.
Joining us from New York City and the village Zendo are Roshis Pat Enkyo Ohara and Barbara Joshin Ohara.
From Colorado's Great Mountain Zen Center, we have Roshis Gerry, Shishin, Wick, and Ilia, Shinko, Perez.
From the Zen Life and Meditation Center near Chicago, Roshis June, Ryushin, Tanoue, and Robert Joshin Althouse.
And from San Diego Zen Center, Roshis Nicolee, Jikyo, McMahon, and Barry Kaigen McMahon.
We're so grateful they all said yes to this conversation. As you'll hear, their stories are tender, funny, and full of wisdom. Welcome, everybody, and thank you all for being here. So what we're going to do format-wise is, I've got some questions just to stimulate the conversation a bit. I think the first question is, do you see parallels between your personal Zen practice, peacemaking, and your personal intimate relationships?
When Zen first came here to this country, one of the stereotypes of Zen was it was a very individualistic practice. But I think it's completely relational. So I can't separate out what my Zen practice is from my relationship with my wife or with anyone else for that matter. And I think we might forget how much Bernie has brought this into our practice through council circle, which is completely relational. And I think that's one of the richest parts of the Zen path for me.
Shinko and I decided to take a picture with crossed swords, indicating that sometimes we do fight. And in the 5 ranks of Tozan, one of the verses said there's no need to avoid crossed swords. Using the 3 tenets of peacemakers, we work our way through them, particularly not knowing and bearing witness, which I think is an important part of having a healthy relationship. That is our life. If the Dharma wasn't the most important part of each of our lives, I don't think we would be together. And I think that's an essential part of our relationship.
For me, I don't see any difference. That is my life. That's what the choice is to teach, is to embody the principles. And then, in as much as we can, given the fact that we also are crazy human beings, capable of not being one with, not healing, but to have that as your primary understanding of how to live a life of virtue. That, for me, is the foundation of a good relationship.
Always liked when we chanted in service was the absolute light, luminous throughout the whole universe, unfathomable excellence pervading everywhere. And so if that's my understanding, I can't just write off my partner. That understanding instructs me that, well, there's got to be something of value here. So I need to be at least curious and try to find out what that is.
Peacemaking is really being curious. And one of the things that I do that I think's really made a difference for us in terms of peacemaking is I practice with others as the Buddha. He's the fearless Buddha. Or, sometimes I'm just a scared Buddha over here going, oh no. And then I just, can start working with it. But it's creating that space for each other through curiosity. It's a real practice, and it's an ongoing practice. Our culture is certainly giving us lots of good opportunities to practice.
Our complementarity that first brings us together, often, that we're different. And so the very qualities that may intrigue and attract us initially can drive us crazy down the road. And so that's what I think is the interesting thing about relationship, is working with those differences and seeing how, they're a double-edged sword, and that's out of them, this third entity can be created. That both the complementarity is essential to creating this third space, if you will, where a lot more can happen.
I want to go back to something that Shishin referred to, and I looked at your image again this morning with the crossed swords. It's necessary to do that because it comes up. What are the ground rules? How do you get through that without doing harm, and be true to how each of you feel, and tell the truth, and maybe stand for your position or let go of your position at the time when it's needed?
I think a really key one for us has been communication. So, for example, nonviolent communication, imago communication methodologies, it is to have a recognition that really makes a difference, because through good communication, you create a container. So to me, that's really key, is getting trained and how to communicate.
We both tend to be introverts or withdrawn, and we're more easily withdrawn when we're angry. So a lot of stuff doesn't get said because the risks are too great to say them. The stakes are too high. So in the event that you find that you're actually not communicating, one exercise that we found very helpful is setting a timer, and one person gets to monologue, no interruptions. Then at the end of 10 minutes, the other partner then gets to say, all right, this is what I heard you say. And the first partner has to say, well, not quite, or, to see if it was accurate. Then the second person gets to do the same thing. The timer is set for 10 minutes, and they speak their truth. First person gets to say, here's what I heard. It's harder than we think. It's amazing how the mind will distort instantly.
So what relationship doesn't have differences and fights? And, sometimes I'll have done something that I think I'm finished with, and June will come in and make a suggestion to do it differently. And I will lose it. I'll just lose it. I will like blow my lid. In that moment, I don't know who I am. I actually don't know who I am. So I think it's also in relationship, it's a willingness to acknowledge that we're going to have different points of view and we're going to have arguments, but also not to get stuck in my point of view, that I could actually realize that I am stuck in it, and then I could come back and listen.
There are no conditions on our relationship. There are no boundaries that we cannot break. We can let the relationship completely get destroyed and fall apart. And because we trust that love that we don't know where it came from, we can have no preconception. We can break all boundaries. We can be not following the rules of fairness or anything, no rules. I mean, we are free at that moment. And whatever it happens, we let it fall. There has not been one time that the relationship have not come stronger, the love more vibrant, and that we are closer together to continue on the path of the Dharma as it continues to unfold.
Our deep, abiding love has seen us through all kinds of very difficult situations which come up in any relationship. That always wells up, like she said, from that unknown place. Shinko is not a native English speaker, and she was raised in Spain, but she was born in Puerto Rico. And they use language in a different way than we do. In fact, it's a lot spicier, I might say, which sometimes when she's saying something, I think that she's insulting me. And she's just expressing herself the way that they do. And so part of it is my having to just sit with the way the language is used sometimes, and how I'm going to respond to that, how I'm going to react to that. But I think that's probably true whether we speak the same language or not. Sometimes when we speak out of anger or fear or jealousy or whatever it is, the words don't always come out sweet and supportive. But I'm just more aware of that now because she's not a native English speaker, that I have to not overreact and try and give it space and see what happens. And I think that's how we've abided, is just by providing space, just a lot of space, so that whatever our disagreement doesn't fill the whole space. It's just part of it, and we can see the container is larger.
The sense of, the knee-jerk reactivity, can come up, that we enter into relationships, and this becomes then the ground at which we become aware of the wounds, the childhood stuff. So when the reactivity comes up, I think it is an opportunity to say, what is this? Mm-hmm. To actually feel, although it's hard because all the chemicals are jumping, and we want to do something. But to then just say, all right, well, this reminds me of my critical father, or my mother who never saw me, so I think these things get over and over. We go into relationships with the hope that all of that gets healed and soothed and assuaged. And instead, we discover it just gets triggered all over again. And so to see relationships as the crucible in which what needs healing is going to surface. And we are responsible then for helping each other and know the other's wounds.
I think that it is so crucial And also to recognize when you're flooded. For example, if I'm really upset by something and, where your cortisol gets going and you're in fight flight, when I notice that, and I find it a really helpful practice, I let him know I'm going to take a walk and I'll be back in 20 minutes. There's no real capacity to be able to speak in a cogent way, in a clear way. And so I wait till that has settled. And it's such a relief to be able to give that to myself and give that to him.
When I was writing a book on the commentaries on the Book of Equanimity, she read it carefully and she kept saying, "This is so patriarchal." What you write? I said, "Who, me? Patriarchal?" And so we had to. I would look at it, and I think through that process and through our rubbing together, I realized, hey, this is not a hierarchical relationship. It's partnership, and so we evolved. And I think that she helped me see where I was stuck in that. And I started seeing more of the feminine perspective, and I think got more in touch with that in myself as a result of sharing the Dharma and sharing our life in that way. So I think that's an important thing. What Shinko said, having no firm ground upon which to stand. And at the beginning of our relationship, I was pretty firm. This is the way you do it, because this is the way my Zuni Roshi did it, and this is the way we're going to do it. But then I had to evolve, and a lot of it is due to her influence on me. So that was the big shift and surprise.
That was the great teaching. After many years of practice, the great teaching was, I don't really know. I have these opinions that I have put together through my life and my biases and everything. How can I open my not knowing enough to allow these other thought streams to come in, these other ways of seeing? And for me, if you got that in a relationship, the other things you can work out. If you've got that openness and let that flow happen between the two, I think that area of not knowing is the heart of the matter.
I've been married a couple of times, and Shishin and Shinko mentioned, multiple marriages. I'm sure you've been in relationships in the past where your partner did not practice.
Yeah. My first marriage was very challenging because I'd been sitting on my own for 11 years before I entered Zen practice. So my husband at the time and my children were used to me meditating. It was very integrated into their lives as well. But my husband just had no understanding at all about what I was doing. At the time, I had to find a way to reconnect after coming back from retreat. And the primary way I did it is I realized that what I had just gone through, very few people would be interested in or understand. I mean, how are you going to explain what a week-long retreat is or a month-long retreat is? So when I'd come home, I'd focus on him and I'd focus on my children and ask them about their lives, because it was now my job to attune with them and to figure out how to do that. And I found another thing that was very helpful, which was to cook a meal that everybody liked. So it was a way of finding how to be together when I'd had this very, very different experience.
It can be a real problem. My first marriage, my wife did not like my Zen meditation and my practice at the time. I was living in the Navy on the East Coast, going up to see Bernie in New York on some occasions. And my wife is Japanese, but she hated Zen and she hated my interest in it. It can be tough if the person is really opposed to your Zen practice and you just don't feel you can give it up.
I've had students whose partner does not meditate, but, and this, I don't know how rare this is, but I've had more than one student where the partner would insist that they go to Shishin because they always seem better grounded and in a better mood when they came back, and their life was easier.
Are you more or less effective because you're together and teaching, in partnership?
I would say that the relationship really, for me, has cultivated much more humility and openness and curiosity. And you can see from all the things we've talked about where that would especially happen.
My thoughts on that is that the teacher-student relationship is asymmetrical. So in the sense that, like the teacher is seen as the knower, and the student is coming, typically, for some wisdom or something. And oftentimes, I think we're quite happy to embrace the projections, the idealizations that are put onto us by students, because that's simply what it is to be in role, is you want to present as someone who can help. So it's in the intimate relationship, that's where the real person has a chance to emerge. Whether that affects the teacher-student, hopefully it would be in the way to kind of allow oneself to be also vulnerable and share that in a way. But oftentimes, I think we don't. And so there's where I think, there's the difference in mutuality.
I think as a teacher, you get a lot of projections from your students, and often it's in the direction of adoration. And so I think being in a relationship is very humbling and helpful, because you come home and you don't get the same adoration from your partner. It doesn't mean you don't love each other, but it's not the same projection. You're equal. And in fact, that was one of the tricky parts in our relationship, because also June began studying with me and I was her teacher, and you're in that teacher-student relationship, but you're also in a marriage where you're equal. But in the teacher-student relationship, you're really not. There is a projection going on. I had to be very careful about that, because in our marriage, we're equal. And so I think it's very helpful to be in a relationship as a teacher, because it helps you, you don't get too full of yourself.
Although we started the same path, our path have kind of the same Mahayana, but it's taking different directions. Me emphasizing more the feminine aspect of Zen. And I couldn't do this on my own, really, if I had not a steady, supportive relationship on Shishin. So having that give me tremendous strength and stability and power and courage to have this supportive relationship on, even though our path have been taking different aspects at this time. So he's invaluable to me.
For many, many years, co-teach. And we see this, we didn't have individual students, and certain students were mine and certain students were Shinko's. And so that made it more difficult than it would be otherwise. I mean, all the students that came to the Great Mountain Zen Center were our students. They weren't my students or her students. So we had to do a lot of consulting about how to deal with students.
We've got 7 teachers in our Sangha. So we have all different styles of people that are teaching, but certainly Joshin and I were the founders. And as the founder, we're very different. We have very different ways. I'm kind of conservative and I like form. The form holds me, and she likes to break up the form and be creative. And I think this just really enlivens the Sangha a great deal because there's not one way. Oh, right, there's no one way. And I think that's been the teaching from the very beginning when we founded the center, and so it's just continued to be in that way. And also the teachers that have come along after us that we've empowered also are all very different types. So I think that that's very healthy for a Sangha.
For younger people who are just entering or in the beginning of a committed relationship, who also both practice, what would you tell them?
I think it's really important to be mindful when you're caught in looking good and being right. So that's a practice on its own in terms, and it helps from Zen practice in general and working with everybody, but especially helps the relationship. Another one is to really practice with the precepts. I especially like not elevating oneself above another. Be really respectful of differences. See each other with fresh eyes, the differences and the uniqueness, but the equality at the same time. That's such a key part of our practice, recognizing the one body and also the uniqueness, the differences. And then I think it's very important to have fun and to create shared experiences that are outside of Zen and have friendships who are not involved in Zen. And so you get to be a normal, everyday person. And this is something that is for me very personally true. This is coming from the teacher side, is I always like to be a student someplace in my life. So I'm taking singing lessons now because it's so important, this hierarchical piece that the teacher can get caught in and the student can get caught in terms of you've got the gold, saying that to the teacher, and that it takes time for students to mature, to find their own strength and capacity and groundedness. And then the last thing I think it's really crucial is to have a teacher that you can be yourself with.
The one in particular that I love is the one about being willing to be a learner and bumble to learn new skills. I've developed just quite recently a passion for electronic music making. So I have to learn everything from scratch. And it's really only about problem solving and spending hours, trying to figure out something. But I think just that not knowing and being in that place, I think can be revitalizing. So I love it. Yes, learn new things.
You're very lucky if you have a commitment to one another and a deep practice that you can do together. I would say you're very lucky because this is something that will sustain a relationship. So, keep going, keep going.
It's easy to think of Zen as something practiced in stillness, in solitude, or in a quiet room.
But what we heard today is that practice doesn't end when the bell rings. It continues, maybe even intensifies when we're in relationship.
When we are faced with difference, misunderstanding, or even the old wounds that surface in the presence of someone we love, that's where the real work begins.
Not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. These aren't abstract principles. They're living tools that help us navigate the ordinary and extraordinary moments of being human together.
We want to thank our guests for being so open about their journeys and for reminding us that relationships are not a distraction from the path. They are the path.
And to you, our listeners, the Zen Peacemakers offer weekly free online events and transformative bearing witness retreats in Alabama, South Dakota, and for over 30 years now at Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland.
Your support makes these offerings possible. If this episode moved you, consider becoming a paid subscriber or member. You'll help sustain our work and gain access to our full podcast archive.
Learn more at www.zenpeacemakers.org.
And don't forget, our next episode drops in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.
The Peacemakers podcast is a production of Zen Peacemakers, an international organization whose mission is to realize our oneness and relieve suffering through contemplative social action. You can find the full video recording of this podcast and more at www.zenpeacemakers.org and go to our media library.